You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Seventh Sanctum with Kerry Ann, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
Good evening and welcome. You're listening to Kerry Ann. This is Seventh Sanctum and we are on Parasearch UK Radio and this is your Thursday night show. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, I've brought with me my beautiful co-host for the evening and that is Kerry Greenaway.
Hello.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, very well.
Good stuff. And we're teaming up tonight to interview the amazing Mark MacNicol, who is an author, filmmaker, among lots of different things as well. So thank you so much for joining this evening, Mark.
Thank you for having me, Kerry, and hello to your lovely audience.
Thank you and welcome. And I'd really love to get stuck in because there's so much that we're going to be talking about this evening. But I would love to know your journey so far. I would love to know in relevance to, you know, the paranormal and kind of how you work and stuff like that and supernatural and that and any experiences you've had in that kind of area. Would that be okay to talk about?
Yeah, cool.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so if I fly off at a tangent, just keep me right and get me on track. But in terms of how I got into writing, I suppose it was a hobby. You know, it was something that I did kind of evenings and weekends. I had a day job, and then I made the decision that I was going to try and turn my day job into a career. And that would be about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And I've been pretty much writing, directing or producing full time since then. Started off with novels, then moved into stage plays and then moved into screen. So my focus for the last maybe 2 or 3 years has been screen, basically. So across those 3 mediums, across the novels and the stage plays and the screenplays, there's been multiple different projects, multiple different stories, and a couple of them have had supernatural, paranormal themes. I know that obviously, I think that the one that we had spoken about originally was the film Dreaded Light, which is my current focus, and the way that I came to that was as a result of an experience that I had when I was a teenager. So there's a kind of intro video on my website, markmacnicol.com, and in that intro video I talk a little bit about what happened, and it was basically my mum was approached by a person who she had never met before, who said that they had a message from my mum's oldest, and my mum said, well, Mark's my oldest and he's still with us. And she said, no, Angela's your oldest. And the woman knew Angela's name, and it turns out that my mum, so basically a year before I was born, my mum had a baby, and the baby died. And it was quite a traumatic birth. for my mum too, because she was in a coma. I think she had 2 or 3 blood transfusions. She almost didn't make it. But when she woke up, I think she woke up like 10 days later, and the baby that she thought she was going to be leaving hospital with had actually been buried by my dad and his parents at the family plot. And the family plot where Angela is buried is actually in the intro video on my website. So as a teenager, that medium said that the message was for me from Angela, and Angela wanted Mark to know that he has a big sister in the spirit world, and she's always with him, she's always watching over them. And I, going through my 20s and 30s, into my 40s, that has always been a source of, it's always been something that I've found to be quite a nice thing. It's not spooked, it's not kind of, it never really freaked me out. I always found it to be quite a comforting thing, the idea that this big sister who I'd never met had carried on into the spirit realm, and she was always with me, a kind of guardian angel type thing. So that was where the idea came from. And I decided that I was going to write, direct, and produce a feature film, fictional, but inspired by that story. And that's where we're at.
No, that is, I mean, a lot of people do identify with that, in the fact that, it is nice and comforting to know that, the loved ones that we have lost, and it's not everyone's, belief system, but it is for those, it is very comforting that the ones that we have lost do live and grow in a, in the spirit world, so to speak. But I mean, what I really love from, well, actually, could you tell us a little bit about the film, please, before I go on to how I love how you've incorporated that into your film? I think it's really beautifully done.
Yeah, so there's a few things that I made the decision that I wanted to do. The first thing being I wanted to put some distance between me and my mum and the subject matter, because it's a work of fiction. It's not a documentary. So the way that I did that was I made the 2 central characters father and daughter rather than mother and son. And basically what I've done is when we start the film, mum has recently passed away. So it's just dad and his teenage daughter who are left. And the spirit of Angela starts to come into the story. I'm just trying to. I'm conscious of the fact that my hope is that you will all see it, so I don't want to give away any spoilers. But I've incorporated Angela's spirit into the storyline. But interestingly, I've tried to do it in an authentic way. I've done a massive amount of research, and the research has been interesting for me, not just professionally in relation to this project, but also on a personal level. Because despite the fact I had that experience as a teenager, I never, up until I started doing research for this project, I had never been to a spiritualist church. I had never had a reading done, nothing like that. So, having attended lots of spiritualist churches and spoken to spiritualists and had readings done, one thing that became evident very quickly was that many of them have got a downer on the genre of horror. And I think one of the reasons that's the case is because of the fact in the majority of cases the world of spirit is presented in a negative way. So people are, spiritualists understand that storytellers have got a job to do in terms of engaging with the audience and giving the audience what they want, but that doesn't detract from the fact that the majority of them think that as a result the end product is inauthentic, because the world of spirit is something that they associate with love and light, not with negativity and evil and darkness. So fictional, but ultimately using my experience as the kind of the source or the inspiration, and using my research to try and find a way to bring Angela's spirit into the genre of horror in a way that is hopefully authentic.
See, I mean, me and Kerry were talking about this before we come on live about how you've taken your own personal experiences. And although I acknowledge that you say you've disassociated yourself with this particular story, the fact that you've been able to bring that personal element, so to speak, into the story does really give it that difference to someone that's not necessarily experienced what you're writing about. A lot more comes into it. And in regards to, as well, you say about the spiritualists, I think a lot of paranormal investigators or those that work within the paranormal will identify with what a lot of the spiritualists have said in regards to what film does to what we actually deal with or we do on a daily basis. Hollywood has a great way of amplifying the worst for the fear factor, for the, you know, for what they consider would be a reason to sell. There's lots of stories that, you know, are real that have been taken and manipulated and made into something that it wasn't. And it becomes very frustrating. So it's very nice to know that you've taken something and you've kept it true to what it is, and you've done that research to make sure that someone who's watching it can, in a way, identify and be able to relate and acknowledge, you know, and also maybe look at what's happening and be able to, you know, go, yeah, well, I went through that, and you know, or I can understand that thought process, or, you know, so that's really nice. Is there anything you would like to say, Kerry, at this point?
I was just thinking about how it adds authenticity to the body of work when you've got somebody that's experienced something and has actually done that kind of level of research of going and having those experiences for themselves. I just think that adds that level of authenticity to the work, which makes it a lot more believable. And when you are watching a film or reading a book, that is what's actually really important in you know, grabbing your viewer or your reader, you know. So, you know, that's very commendable that you did that. I was wondering, when you were going to the spiritualist churches, I mean, I've been to quite a few as myself, and like you say, they always work in a very positive way, in a love and light way, in a very comforting way. How did that make you feel personally when you started to do that?
Well, the first time I walked into a spiritualist church was a very strange experience for me, because, well, I was brought up in a Christian environment. So my grandfather was a pastor of a small evangelical church in Lanarkshire in Scotland, and so throughout my childhood into my teenage years, you know, I would attend church, you know, a lot. I mean, not just on a Sunday. We're talking like, you know, midweek, Saturdays, Sundays, maybe 5-6 times a week. When I was staying with my grandparents, I would go to church. So the first thing that struck me was how similar the spiritualist services are to Christian services. Mm-hmm. So, you know, real, almost identical with the hymns, the prayer, even the interior, the architecture, the motifs, the symbolism, everything very, very similar. The only difference was, at the end of that first service, a medium did a demonstration of her mediumship with the congregation. So the first thing, obviously, that I was struck by was how similar it was to the Christian services of my childhood. But the next thing that kind of blew me away was during the actual demonstration, the medium, her name is Jennifer Phillips, and she is based in Glasgow, or just north of Glasgow, and she during her demonstration she kind of pointed in my direction, and it was quite busy, myself, and there was a chap sitting behind me, and she pointed over to us and said, "Which one of you is the writer?" So obviously, you know, I was shocked by that. So I said, "Well, yeah, I'm a writer," and the chap behind me, you know, shook his head because he wasn't a writer. So she said, well, yeah, I mean, and then she started to communicate with me that there were various spirits with her looking to, and she started to give me, messages from spirit in relation to, she said, oh, you're working on a spirit-themed project at the moment, and spirit are giving you encouragement, and they're also asking you to get a move on, because they see it as being something that is it's an important piece of work, and they want to encourage you, and they want to ask you to get a move on. So here we have Jennifer Phillips. Never met her before in my life. First time I've walked into a spiritualist church, and not only has she, from the platform, identified me as being a writer, she's went further by identifying that I'm currently working on a spirit-themed project. I mean, you could not make that shit up, because they talk about life being stranger than fiction. I couldn't put that in a film because it's too unbelievable.
Yeah.
But since then, the readings that I've had done, I'm not going to say that every single reading I've had done, or every single time a platform medium has worked with me, they have nailed it as much as Jennifer did on that first occasion. But there have definitely been occasions when I've been in readings and I've had very, very, names, dates, very, very specific pieces of information, even like, things inside my house, just, because spirit obviously wants you to know that they're with you. So, yeah. So my first experience of a spiritualist church was mind blowing, to say the least.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, and also I was going to ask actually, and I think you've already answered, but I'm going to ask again just in case there is another occasion. But in your research, and because you sounds like you've gone quite in depth in making sure that you've covered all aspects in regards to this film, has it been something that you've come across that's either like blown your mind or been uncomfortable to deal with?
No, I mean, I've came across lots that's blown my mind, because it's almost like I've been going in so many readings that I've came up with it's almost like there's three types of reading for me from a research perspective. There's the first type where the medium is giving me generic information that could apply to anyone. And personally, I cut mediums a bit of slack, because I appreciate the fact, look, I don't know how it works. I can't explain contact between different dimensions. But what I do know for a fact is it's not like picking up a mobile phone. It's not, it's not like sending an email. So if I go into a reading and the medium gives me nothing but generic information, then I don't necessarily leave that meeting. In fact, I don't at all leave that reading thinking that person is a fake or anything like that, as some people are keen to do. So for me, three types of reading. One could apply to anyone, generic. The second type is, it could apply to me, and it is fairly specific, but it's not what you would describe as being on the nose. And then the third type of reading is where it's just, there's no doubt. It's a name, it's a date, it's a piece of information that complete stranger cannot know. It's not possible for them to know. And then obviously readings will, sometimes you'll get a mix match of all three within one reading. So that, that definitely, I have had mind blowing experiences during my research. Did you say have I been made uncomfortable or freaked out?
Yeah, or from any part of it, whether it's to do with the reading side of things, or maybe something that you've had to experience because you've researched into this film, something that may have been a little bit difficult, or yeah.
Well, there was one thing, and that was the spirit of the dead baby in the film. Obviously, my mum. I mean, one of the first things I did was ask my mum's permission, and she agreed. I wouldn't have done this if my mum hadn't been on board from the start. And my mum's been a big help in particular, telling me a lot of stuff that I didn't know about what happened to her, like before she went into hospital and when she was in hospital and when she left, etc. But one of the most difficult things for me has been, if I'm telling this story, and I've got a job to do, which is obviously to engage and entertain with the audience. Before I start the process, I kind of need to know what type of story it is. So in our line of work, you'll hear people talking about genres, and obviously horror is a genre, and then within horror we have subgenres. From a very early stage, I kind of got a sense that this was going to be a horror, and that was something that I kind of had to decide very early on in the process, because as you can imagine, it would be difficult to start the process off as a comedy and then flip to horror. So how can I take the idea of Angela, which has been something supportive and positive in my life, and turn it into something scary? And especially, how can I do it when a lot of spiritualists... Now, again, this is something that's come out of my research, is that different spiritualists have different opinions. So, for example, one of the things I wanted to ask was, I was being told by a lot of spiritualists that, in their opinion, the reason that horrors were inaccurate and inauthentic was because it's only love that can come back from the spirit plane. So yes, spirit can be annoyed or angry or confused, but the multi-dimensions within the universe are set up in such a way that evil can't come back. So when you see demons and evil spirits, as you do in the majority of cases on horror films, in the opinion, and again it is opinions, but in the opinion of probably the majority of spiritualists that I spoke to, that if I did that, if I did that, they would not be supportive, and if I did that, it would be inauthentic. So how can I incorporate my big sister, the spirit of my big sister, into this story in such a way that it is authentic, but I also satisfy the demands of a horror audience? So that has been probably my biggest challenge.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I mean, can I ask, so from your religious background before, and I hope I don't sound very ignorant when asking this question, but is there any conflictions between your family's kind of religious upbringing to the process that you've gone through at the moment? Because I know you said there's a lot of similarities between the two religions in regards to, the churches itself and how the services are run. But is there anything that you found difficult to get your head around, or to go ahead with previous teachings?
Well, I mean, I'm not a Christian. So, I was brought up in a Christian environment, but for me, even as a teenager and in my 20s, I just didn't buy it. And, things like, the dinosaurs and evolution and science and the way that they conflicted with the Bible. For me, I basically just couldn't buy Christianity. That was just me personally. So, probably later on into my 20s and 30s, I went on a journey, and I looked at different things, and I probably ended up most comfortable with the kind of Zen Buddhism route. That was that was an area that I found myself, when I started to look into that, it was like it kind of clicked and it made sense, and it didn't conflict with science in the same way that Christianity did for me. So I would probably class myself as being a Zen Buddhist, and then when I started to investigate spiritualism, the continuation of spirit, I found that there wasn't really any conflict between that and Zen Buddhism, but there was definitely a conflict with Christianity, because obviously, there are, like, when Christians talk about the spirit, they talk about it going to heaven. And the picture that is painted in the Bible of what happens to our soul after we die, and subject to, for example, us being born again, etc., and subject to us having accepted Christ as our Saviour, our spirit, our soul is then either goes to heaven or it goes to hell. So I was brought up in an environment where even really, really good people who had never committed an evil act in their life, because of the fact they had not become born again, the people that the people in that church believed that they were going to hell, and that that kind of didn't make sense to me. So, was there conflict between my research and Christianity? The answer is yes. And when you actually read up on it, and something that I have been surprised by is the amount of ignorant people who have opinions on spirit. So obviously because of this project, I find myself speaking to as many people as possible, and I find that a lot of people are kind of not only close-minded to the idea that spirit continues after death, but they're also angry and hostile towards the idea. But then when you kind of push back and you kind of debate with them, you discover that they haven't read one book on it. They haven't read one book. They haven't had one reading done. They haven't been to a spiritualist church. So I've been surprised by the number of ignorant people who take very strong positions on this subject matter, despite the fact they have done zero in the way of research themselves personally.
Yeah, I think ignorance is something that is quite, I mean, in regards to communication with spirits as well, certain religions, other religions don't necessarily believe that we're making communication with the actual spirit that we think we are, but a manifestation of something from hell and stuff like that. So I think it's a fear factor that also prevents people from moving forward and actually looking into what spiritualism is, or what, spirit is for spiritualists and spirituals. But I also think if they were to, it would challenge so much of their belief system that it would be hard for them to accept, even if they experienced it themselves, really.
Well, I've actually got family members and friends. One particular family member has probably been to more readings than I have. And she has had very, very, specific messages from friends and loved ones. But she is not close-minded, but she's kind of on the fence. So she's had more than I've had, but she's on the fence.
Some people need them to tap them on their shoulder and say, "Hello, here I am."
This is another interesting thing that I've kind of been exploring. The difference between the words proof and evidence. And I think that, this is just my opinion, but my opinion is that there will never be proof. Because if there was proof, then people wouldn't need to go on a journey.
I do think that that's an opinion that's shared with a lot of people. I do think that a lot of us come to the conclusion that we will never have that definitive proof for lots of different reasons. Just because I think some people would never be able to really, there'll be far too many questions for it to ever be decided or agreed upon as being proof. But I think a lot of people would agree with you there saying that.
Yeah, the other thing is Christians don't have proof.
Pardon?
Christians don't have proof.
Oh, I know. Yes, I know, and
no one's got any proof. One thing we all know for sure is that we're all going to find out one day. Each of us is going to find out. That's for sure.
That's really true. That's true. On that note, it's a good time to take a break. We'll be right back just after this.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
Join Kerry Greenaway and Jay Lynch for the Parasearch UK radio show as they share their paranormal news, views and reviews from the UK and the USA with the help of guests from both sides of the pond. Will they agree or agree to disagree? Find out every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, right here on Paramania Radio. You're listening to Seventh Sanctum with Kerry Ann, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
Hello, welcome. I am Kerry Ann. Thank you for coming back and joining us again. I am with my very beautiful Kerry Greenaway, and we are speaking this evening with Mark, and we've been talking about a little bit about his experiences to where he is today, and his fantastic film that he is putting out there for all you guys to have a look at. And I think as well there's an opportunity for you guys to get involved if you want to and you're interested. So before we get on to that, Mark, we were talking about lots of different aspects of the paranormal. Is there anything else that intrigues you about the things that you've come across?
Well, I suppose one of the things we touched on was the difference between the words proof and evidence, and that my exploration of those two words and the discourse surrounding those two words has been very interesting. Another interesting exploration for me has been the difference between the words spiritualism and paranormal. And I have been on, obviously I've spent a lot of time in spiritualist churches and with spiritualists, but I've also spent some time with paranormal researchers and paranormal investigators, and the two of them are very, very different. And I have found the difference between those two communities as being interesting. And even talking to people about their definitions of the word paranormal and their definitions of the word spiritual has been interesting, because a lot of people have a very clearly defined understanding of what the two words mean to them, but other people just seem to think that it's the same thing.
I think it's for me, paranormal and spiritual, they are different ends of the spectrum, like you said. But I do think people, it's almost like, I think for me, those words, although there is a definition to them, what people believe they are, it's almost like the word intelligence. You know, people have got different perspectives and opinions on what the word intelligence mean. And I think it's the same with the paranormal and what people would consider paranormal, what they wouldn't. And also spiritualism. Now, the spiritualism side of things is something that's where my roots are. That's where I started before I became a paranormal investigator. And it is you're right, very different. And you have people that work within the paranormal that discredit spiritualism. And there's been times when there's a particular belief that I have, and we've looked into it, and me and Kerry have been talking about this, and actually it's not been true, or there's been things that have been proven to be wrong by a parapsychologist. For example, Helen Duncan Smith is a spiritualist and was discredited by Harry Price, who's a parapsychologist. So it does overlap, it does cross over, and it's really fascinating, even more so, to actually see different people's, like you said, stances on psychology. So you have, like you said, the the investigators, but then you will have a parapsychologist whose stance is they don't necessarily believe that there is paranormal activity. They're there to discredit it, or so to speak. That's very blunt. That's very simplistic way of putting it. Whereas you have investigators that will believe that they want to prove that there is evidence. So it is a bit of a conundrum depending on the perspective that you've come across. So have you on your research, have you come across anyone in particular that you were fascinated by, or any of their teachings, or on an investigation, was there anything that scared you? So I've just thrown a load of questions at you. Feel free to answer any of them.
No, I mean, again, it's all about individuals and it's all about opinions, and there's no reason why. In fact, we don't all have the same opinions, but my journey, my personal journey, my professional journey throughout this process I have found myself steering towards spiritualism, and steering away from the paranormal investigations, which I did attend a few, and I found them to be, very high tech, lots of kit, lots of equipment, just nothing that I could really say demonstrated, in my opinion, the type of communication that I was having over on the other side, in the spiritualist side of things, where I was getting very specific messages and I was getting very, on the nose information from services and readings, and I just wasn't getting that from the investigations. They were very, they were almost theatrical in some respects, because there was an element of I was shitting myself. I was scared. I found myself being quite scared on some of those investigations, just because of the nature of some of the places that we were going into, and it was night and it was dark and it was quiet, and it was almost like walking into a horror film in some respects. Whereas throughout my entire journey on the spiritualist side, I didn't once feel frightened or freaked out.
Now, that is a very big difference between a spiritualist church and a paranormal investigation, because a spiritualist church, you're connecting to you on a personal level, whereas when you go to an investigation, you're actually trying to connect to the spiritual activity within the location. And generally speaking, the spiritual connection or impression is left because of a traumatic or unpleasant experience. So there is a marked difference in ways you are trying to connect. And the tech side is where the scientists sort of are trying to prove that we leave an impression.
Yeah, one thing that me and Kerry have tried to explore is an energy-based level of investigation, where you don't really use equipment but use your own body as a kind of your biggest tool, and use mediumship and other natural resources like crystals and so forth to be able to communicate, which is something that we're looking into. So we'll definitely speak more about that level of things, because that might be something that you may be interested in as well. But it is also good. It's nice to see that other perspective of things, and someone that does prefer the spiritual side of things. It's really nice that you acknowledge that mediums do have bad days. It's not really simple. It's not as simple as people think it is, that you can just turn up and say, I've got Uncle Willie here who lived down Lakeside and died at 69. You can't always get that communication. It does take a lot of work. So it's really quite refreshing to hear that from someone to, it's not about someone being really bad at what they do or being a fake, but that sometimes it's not always clear as what people think it is. And also you've got to acknowledge that the people that you may be communicating with could have been really unwell before they passed away. Could have had memory loss, could have had disorientation. If that's how they're bringing themselves forward as someone being, like you said, they want to prove that it's them, that is evidence to prove that it's them, and they will come forward like that. So, it is nice to hear that.
Yeah.
Acknowledgement. But we could talk all night about this. There's lots of other things that have gone on in your career and things that you've done, and I'd love to speak more about how people could support you in the work that you're doing at the moment, and some of your previous work as well. So with that being said, there's lots of people that have been listening that may want to be able to support you in your journey now, or see how they can get involved. What is it that you're looking for, or what could help at this point with moving forward with your film?
Well, the main thing is money. The reality of the situation is that the reason I decided to to produce this film is because there are currently not as many opportunities as we would like in the creative sector, whether it be in Scotland or England or elsewhere in the UK. There's just not enough television and film projects to sustain the number of writers, actors, directors, producers, crew, etc. So unfortunately, we're losing a lot of people. A lot of people are leaving the UK to work elsewhere, and the people who are here, many of them struggle to provide for themselves and their families. So they have to either do it on a part-time basis, or in some cases leave the industry. So I made the decision that I was going to produce this film on a micro budget, and the reason that I did that was because of there's a government scheme called SEIS, Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme. There's a list of qualifying industries of which screen is one, and it means that any investment gets between 50 and 70% refunded. So the type of investors, so we've already got investment, and the types of investors who have been coming on board are not not people who you would necessarily describe as being investors in film. But because of the refund, because of the fact someone puts £1,000 into the film, technically they're buying 1,000 shares in the film, but it's only costing them £300 because they're getting a £700 refund. So it would be the equivalent of going to the bookmakers, putting on a £10 bet, but just giving them £3 because they're giving you £7 back. And I'm not trying to patronise anybody by saying that they are definitely going to make a profit, because everybody knows it's very, very difficult to make profit in film. That said, it does happen. Films do get made, go to festivals, are bought by distributors, and make decent profits. They are in the minority, but it does happen. So I've been asking people to come on board, put some money in, have a bit of fun, because they get access to loads of different perks and VIP exclusive offers, and in the process support the arts, support the creative sector, and if the film makes money, if the film makes a profit, then they will make a profit. And if it doesn't, then their exposure is only 30%. So it's definitely what could be described as a low-risk opportunity.
It's also got a great feel factor in it, because you are actually doing something great within a community. That's not just restricted to an area. It's part of something that's bigger than that. And I suppose there's obviously more than you that's involved as well. So sounds like becoming part of an adventure. That sounds like there's lots of fun things to do along the way, and being involved as well. So that sounds like a great opportunity. I mean, am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, totally. We are definitely. See, one of the advantages of a project of this nature, because it's what would be described as a micro budget. So we've already sold 60,000 shares, and we knew that the bare minimum that we could shoot for would be 50k. We were confident that we could deliver the product that we wanted to for a minimum of 50k, but the SEIS ceiling is 150k. So we're really trying to hit that 150k target, and we're almost halfway there. But we are trying to do something a bit different, and the fact that this is a micro budget project means that we don't have multiple execs insisting on X, Y, Z. Because of the fact I'm the main producer, it means that the creative decisions are being made not by a faceless suit somewhere who doesn't have a vested interest in the project. So the hope would be that, the idea of trying to tell this story in an authentic way would definitely turn most execs off, because most execs they want the jump scares. They want often if you're watching a horror and the first 20 minutes you see a cat, so at some point the cat's going to jump out of a cupboard. It's probably going to end up dead. All of those kind of cheap tricks to get the audience jumping out their seat. They want all of those things. But if you're trying to deliver, the story in an authentic, non-patronising way, then a project of this nature is perfect, because we keep the control. We keep the control in house, and hopefully on that basis we can create a piece of work that does its job in terms of satisfying the audience, but is also very different from what else is out there. But as part of the project, then investors get to come along to premieres and exclusive updates and naming the credits, all of those sexy things, and even potentially getting on as an extra and stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be fun. I would love to do it. This film sounds perfect for me, because I'll be honest with you, I'm so bad with horrors, it's unbelievable, which comes as a surprise to a lot of people considering what I do. But for me, if there's a film that's forever jumpy, I spend 90% of the time behind a cushion, trying to watch it behind a cushion. So to know that there is a film out there that is in that genre, that I know that I can quite comfortably sit and watch, and I'm not going to be forever jumping out my skin, that would appeal to me.
Yeah,
I'm sure I'm not the only one out there.
It's ironic, because I've spoken to quite a few spiritualists and paranormal investigators who don't watch horrors because they scare them.
I don't watch horrors for that very reason. I'm the same. I don't watch horror movies at all, because it plays on my mind far too much. And I know it's really strange, isn't it? A paranormal investigator doesn't watch horrors, but
same, definitely.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons is because, like, I think most horrors are more interested on taking the audience on what could be described as the equivalent of a kind of ride at Alton Towers. They're more interested in taking you, up and down and loop the loop and do the dips and stuff like that, than they are about actually they've lost sight of what's important, which is delivering an authentic world with believable characters and an engaging story. And in my experience, I've been watching a lot of horrors, again, by way of research, and it's actually quite depressing. The way in which these projects seem to patronise their audience by taking them on that Alton Towers ride, and have things, these jump scares and stuff like that.
They're like the non-thinking watch, aren't they? They are literally, like you say, an Alton Towers ride where you can just go on that journey without actually overthinking it too much, because it is focused on the thrill, I suppose you would call it.
Yeah.
The fear factor, the thrill, and that's kind of it. Whereas when you start introducing other themes like psychological themes coming through, they kind of get you more, don't they?
I think so. I think that, the characters and how they engage with each other and the world that's being created, I think that that's the way to get people, because ultimately it's not me that's going to scare people. People scare themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, very much so.
Really true. How true is that? I spend a lot of time going, they're gonna jump out. No. And I talk myself into going, don't jump, because that's coming. I jump out my skin. So, yeah.
I've actually got quite good at it, because again, it's ironic, because I definitely was a scaredy cat and didn't watch horror films because they scared me so much. But I think a lot of that is because of the fact I kind of grew up with this experience that I had as a teenager. So if you believe in spirit, if you believe in the continuation of spirit, then these films are scarier to you than someone who is either skeptical or doesn't believe in spirit. But one of the ways that I kind of, because I was watching so many horror films, what I used to do was I used to mute when I knew there was a high likelihood that a jump scare was coming up. I would just mute the sound, because it's amazing how much emphasis is placed on the sound in these horror films. So if you keep your remote control handy, and you, of course, this is pointless if you're at the cinema because you don't have a remote control, but if you're at home and you've got the remote control, you can normally tell when the scary bits are coming up. Just hit the mute button and it makes the whole experience much less traumatic.
True, the music cues. It's the music cues, isn't it? You know it's coming because the music changes.
That's it. And I think if you're in the cinema, then you brought it onto yourself. More for you. There's no control there.
We have a friend that actually screams when she's watching things like that. She actually literally screams out loud, and that adds a whole new level of scary.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, horror is, from an investment perspective, horror is a massive opportunity, because it's it's the most commercially successful of all the genres. It's the only genre that has its own dedicated festivals and subgenres. And the demand for content is such that a lot of really bad horror films are selling for decent amounts of money. Because of people like you're describing. There's a lot of people out there who just go along for the fun of it, because they enjoy being scared. And it's probably the same reason why, if you go back millennia in prehistoric times, when we were catching our food with spears, people used to scare each other sitting around the campfire at night. It's probably it's probably the oldest genre of story in existence.
Yes, I agree with you, actually. Yeah, that's a fair point.
And it has got a massive following. I remember not even a year ago that there was actually a series of, and what they did was they would encourage young filmmakers or filmmakers to make a 3-minute skit of a film, and each week they will show 4, and they would have a cinema of people, and they would then kind of nominate who done the best, and there was like a massive money winning at the end of it. But it was a really good show and had a massive following. So you know, they haven't seen a show based on any other genre but horror. So it is massive, and it's, you know, you got.
I saw one fairly recently, a horror, and it actually came from a small video online that went viral. It's called Lights Out. It was David Sandberg. Yeah, so David Sandberg actually, I think it was him and his girlfriend did like I think it was just like a 30-second or a 60-second clip, and it went viral. And it was where you switch the light on, there's no one in the doorway. You switch the light off, there's an outline in the doorway. On, no one, off, outline. And after you switch the light on, there's no one there. And then when you switch the light off, there's an outline. So that little 60-second kind of video that went viral, David Sandberg was given $5 million to turn it into a feature film, and it was his first feature.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And it shows you as well. Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, we are coming up close to the end of the show now. So what I would like to ask is, if people would like to get involved, how can they find you, and what is the best way for them to be able to take part?
Just have a look at the video on markmacnicol.com. If you don't have the money to get involved on the investment side of things, then it would help us if you share it on social media, share the video, just to try and get the word out there as much as possible.
I mean, we will do that ourselves. We will do that. We'll share the link into the chat room. We will also try to give it a little bit of a share on our own personal pages as well, and we'll put it up on the like page as well. So if you can just get sharing as well, guys, and also get in touch with Mark as well if you'd like more information and find out more about how you can support him on his fantastic journey and all the other people involved as well. But before we go, you have actually got you've got some books as well that you've written.
Yeah, so paperback and Kindle. The first one's called Coconut Badger. That is not paranormal or spiritualist. It's it's adult contemporary fiction. But the second one, Finn McCool Rises, is what would be described, I would imagine, as a kind of supernatural theme. And one of the central characters is a chap called Finn McCool, who, if anyone's interested in kind of Celtic mythology, Finn McCool is a character from, I think he's more associated with Ireland, but definitely also Scottish. And maybe about 2,000 years ago, he was a big chap who used to, run about kicking the living daylights out of Vikings and stuff like that. And in my second book, Finn McCool Rises, I've got him coming into the modern day world to help out a journalist, a reporter who's having some problems.
Okay, and people can purchase those if they want to on Amazon and places. Yeah.
So they're on Amazon in paperback, or they're on my website in paperback, and they're also on Kindle UK and Kindle US. If you read it on Kindle, do me a big favour and leave a review afterwards, because that helps with the rankings.
I was going to say that because they've both got very good reviews. Both of them have got very good reviews. From what I was reading about those books, they've both got very good reviews. So I'm definitely going to be having a read of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting for me because that was 5 years ago. I started off when I left the day job. I started off with novels, and then I moved into stage plays. And for the last about 3 years ago, I did a master's degree in screenwriting at a university in Glasgow. And then I went off to Hollywood for 3 months and spent some time over there making some contacts and connections. And then since I came home, pretty much my focus has been on screen. But the books, it was great writing them, and they were well received, and they're still being well received, and the reviews are excellent. And maybe someday I'll go back to books and theatre, but for now the focus is screen.
Well, it sounds like you've gone on an amazing journey. It sounds like you've put a lot of there's a lot that goes into what you do, especially with this film. It's fantastic to hear that you've walked those paths yourself before you've wrote about them or spoken about them. So that's fantastic. But thank you so much. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to add, Kerry?
No, I just wish you all the very best, because I'm absolutely fascinated by your work. The film sounds like it's going to be amazing. I hope you get all the investment you need. We'll post all the links, as I say, on the pages that we've got, and on the links to the show, so people can hopefully find you if they're interested in investing. And good luck.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on. It's been a really, it's not even felt like an interview. It's just felt like, friends sitting around having a coffee, having a chat. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. And I second everything that Kerry said. And we're definitely keeping in touch and following your journey, and love to see more. And I can't wait to watch the film, myself, because it does sound like something that I would be able to enjoy as well. So thank you. And
let's make sure you get some nice frocks ready for the premiere, and we'll get you on the red carpet.
Oh, that'd be lovely. we love a frock, don't we, Kerry?
Off and good to go. That'd be fantastic.
Okay.
It'd be great to be part of that journey with you. Thank you. And like Kerry said, we'll share, and we'll catch up again, and have you back on and see how you're getting on. And yeah, it'd be fascinating. Thank you.
Okay, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. And we're going to say goodnight to everyone now. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. All the information is going to be shared in the chat room on the like pages. If you do want to get any information about Mark, you can find him on social media. And also, like he said, his website, which is markmacnicol.com. I hope I've said that right.
Yeah.
MarkMacnicol.com.
Brilliant. And we'll also share that video as well. So go and have a look, have a listen yourself, and share it with all your friends. And let's see whether we can help make some magic happen. But thank you so much. And thank you to my amazing Kerry. I've enjoyed this Kerry sandwich.
I love a Kerry sandwich with you, I have to say. People are queuing up now for a Kerry sandwich. It's getting a bit surreal, Kel.
But no, honestly, it's been very humbling to hear your story. And like I said, I love how you've brought them two together. So, yes, I'm going to say goodnight. Otherwise I can talk forever. Say goodnight to you, Kerry and Mark.
Good night.
And good night to all of our guests this evening. Good night.
Good night.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.